Our tale begins on the 71st day, when the Globins were galloping frantically on their mounts. Goblin recalls the elf warning him that the human army was encroaching upon Cudel Forest, and he remembers that breaking the pact would render it null and void. Grateful for the heads up, Goblin humbly accepts the job, but insists they have the freedom to act. It was the moment for their first big gig as mercenaries, and Goblin and his crew were ready to roll. Goblin had 36 main members and their kin who could sneak around thanks to the witch's magic. He'd gathered a total of 73 members to strike at the crack of dawn. They kicked off their operation bright and early because Goblin's clones, scouting ahead, stumbled upon the human army camp the day before. Arriving at the scene, they found a magical barrier preventing monsters weaker than the user from invading. Their mission: smash that barrier pronto. Goblin orders them to surround it. Ensuring everyone's in position, he boosts his Gi-Durg with some elemental resonance from his silver arm to break the barrier with a single shot. And he boosts your finger to you subscribe in the channel to not lost the updates. The humans are left scratching their heads as Terry unleashes a massive attack, raising mountains around them. Goblin explains that in that confined space, Dombi and the witch launched a simultaneous magic assault, while he, summoned hordes of skeleton warriors and hurled spears left and right to thin out the common soldiers. But he knew that wouldn't be enough to bring them down. As his skeletons start getting neutralized one by one, a blonde swordswoman strides forth, and Goblin, thinking she's the knight in charge, decides to ironically greet the gang with a mighty blast. Then he calls forth his skeletal warriors once more. The blonde knight asserts that there's no doubt the ogre is leading the undead army. She urges her allied soldiers to take down Goblin. Meanwhile, the skeleton warriors advance, only to be met with a human mage's spell, neutralizing several of them. Then he casts a spell to boost his allies' speed. Goblin realizes it's a speed buff and acknowledges the commander's strategic prowess. Her magical power isn't half bad either. He also realizes that targeting her heart isn't a bad idea, just as she's attempting to strike him, so he sends her flying far away, causing one of her allies to try and catch her, but they both end up hitting the dirt. Goblin reckons she could be useful to him and declares he'll spare their lives, but she retorts, saying she'll shut him up herself. She's hell-bent on taking Goblin's life. However, he kinda digs her feisty spirit. He realizes she's a lot more than he gave her credit for. She tells him to shut up again and challenges him to show his strength. If he defeats her, she'll accept whatever comes next. Goblin ponders: a knight, a mage, a priestess, and a swordswoman with a flaming sword. He wants to capture those four alive. As for the rest, they'd leave that up to the others to decide whether to kill or to snack. If she didn't want to lose, she better go all out. The next few minutes can hardly be called a fight. It was more of a one-sided humiliation. Kupkichi casually knocks down 4 soldiers at once, while Dombi casts a spell that makes the humans do her bidding, causing them to turn on each other. Dombi manages to spark a massive brawl because the soldiers were eager to please her, and that was the biggest problem. It was her first time using the spell called Seductive Evil Eye, and even she was a bit scared. Bloodsato turns the human soldiers' blood into swords to attack each other, and Terry seems to be having a blast, unleashing a mighty attack that knocks down several soldiers. In the end, none of Goblin's allies end up getting hurt, while they completely wreck the enemies. The knight's sword lands a hit on Goblin, but it doesn't do much damage. Still, he's impressed. She fights pretty darn well, until the human mage summons the Weiss Flame Drashan Dragon. For Gobse, it'd be tough for Goblin to withstand a direct attack from a level 5 magic creature. He sees that the knight is ready to sacrifice herself, but the mage admits he can't control the dragon and apologizes. So, Goblin grabs the girl, claiming victory, and declares he won't let her die there. She just stares at him without saying a word as he takes the brunt of the dragon's attack on his back. Gobse realizes he's enduring it with a triple-layer magical shield level 3 magical conclusion shield, an atmospheric manipulation vacuum layer, plus a high-pressure water shield from his hydraulic hand. The dragon couldn't harm him, though it seemed pretty intense. And that's how they win the battle. Plus, Goboru scores by taking talented warriors like them as prisoners. The blonde girl finds it unbelievable. Goboru figures since he's been merciful by not killing them, they'll have to work pretty hard for him. He tells everyone to gear up to leave and gains new abilities: Brave Heart, Trip, Army Control, and Speed Reading. Plus new occupations like Commander, Heavy Swordsman, Minstrel, Strategist, Lancer, Slave, Farmer, Monk, Heavy Warrior, and Light Warrior. He also gains skills like Forging, Evasion Boost, Great Circulating Cut, Cross Cut, and Iron Spirit, Light Spirit, Unilateral Justice, Unwavering Faith, Misconception, Connected Soul. Then Goboru heads over to the elf chief and asks if he's lounging around too much for a village leader. They toast, and the elf chief thanks Goboru for stopping the human army invasion, explaining he came to play with Goboru out of gratitude. Goboru's chuffed. It's all for gratitude after all, so he accepts. Goboru decides to check on the humans, as per usual, to see how many days they'd last. Turns out, the drug works faster on humans than elves because, well, they're more instinctual. The 72nd day rolls in, and thanks to the ear cuffs, the humans couldn't lie or hide anything. So Goboru scoops up loads of intel, but of course, he's not keeping it all to himself. He's gonna pass it on to the elf chief. He remembers the elf chief asking him to share prisoner info, because relying solely on Goboru wouldn't be great for morale. Obviously, there's a reward involved: 10 barrels of that elf booze. Goboru's pumped about the offer. He couldn't resist the elf drink cause it's just too good, so he spills the beans. The captured humans spilled the beans about their main troop route. The humans plan to use their forces to approach from various directions simultaneously. Dividing the forces wouldn't be wise, but the trails are narrow in Cudel Forest. They probably didn't have much choice. The elf chief praises Goboru for living up to his name, and his daughter asks about that spell called Hello. The 73rd day arrives, and it's time for Goboru and his crew to follow the invasion route ahead of the main troop. They set up various traps and then hide in trenches, led by a knight in iron armor. The army marches in sync with about 500 men, including roughly 100 heavily armed wizards. If the elves were to face them head-on, it'd be a tough battle. But for Goboru and his mercenary squad, it's a piece of cake. They're well prepared. The goblins start knocking down trees to block the humans' path, and then start hurling rocks enchanted with spells, equally squashing those who flee and those who resist. In no time, only 300 of the 500 men are left. The long-range squad called Regret takes care of the rest with continuous shots. The soldiers who manage to dodge have to deal with goblins hidden in the trenches around them. The enemies are swiftly reduced to less than 100, but one soldier suggests they all still alive should band together and form a barrier, so they do just that, and the knight orders them to pile up whatever they can, whether it's shields or corpses. Goboru admires the knight's competence. Meanwhile, the Regret squad keeps shooting at those soldiers. Goboru sees they've hit a stalemate and need to change tactics. He sends Gobkichi to nab their commander alive. The human soldiers start shooting because they don't want them getting closer, but Gobkichi's got a shield and deflects the shots. There were 3 of Goboru's mercenaries for every enemy. The human soldiers didn't stand a chance. Gobkichi approaches the soldiers until a red-haired soldier asks him if they don't know how to fight normally. Gobkichi replies that the humans' usual way is boring, and they start battling. Goboru realizes the guy would make a good servant, so Gobkichi takes out all the soldiers, grabs the commander without killing him, and hoists him over his shoulder. Goboru thinks the outcome's excellent and reports everything to the elf chief before preparing to leave, and of course, he gains some new skills from that battle. The 74th day arrives, and there are several human soldiers who were captured. They complain that Goboru spared their lives and left them in that hole. But the commander tells them to quit thinking like that. They're lucky to have food and a place to sleep. So, Goboru orders them to spill the beans on why the humans were attacking the elves' kingdom. It all started with the princess of the human kingdom of Sternbert. She caught this weird, 99% fatal disease. She was about to marry the heir to the throne of the neighboring Kilika Empire. The king demanded a cure be found, and after the whole kingdom put in effort, they found what they were looking for. a miraculous cure in the hands of the elves deep in Kudal Forest, blessed by the forest demigod. In short, human greed sparked that war. Humans seemed to be a species that only caused trouble, and Goboru felt it because he used to be one. While Terry was scouting for elements, she stumbled upon something that released a lot of thermal water. To be precise, Goboru tells everyone to explore it because it has a bunch of benefits like having a hot water bath. The 75th day rolls in. Goboru gets the idea to use those prisoners for new training to allow others besides himself to improve their leadership skills. Basically, they had a kind of simulation using a real army. So, all the goblins from Goboru's village join in the training. The commander's tired of skeleton warriors and asks if he can spar with Goboru. Goboru thinks he's pretty brave and accepts. They start fighting, but Goboru quickly defeats the human. Then Gobkichi asks to fight the man too. After that fight, they all decide to have a meal. The commander sits across from Goboru and says he's from an area where many mixed races live, which is why he gets along better with him than with nobles. He doesn't understand why nobles act negatively toward mixed races. Goboru gets what he's saying. The commander tells Goboru he doesn't want to fight for the Imperial Knights anymore. He wants to fight under Goboru's orders, so Goboru releases him and says he's now the master of the red-haired girl. The 77th day comes and Goboru hands over some of the captured humans to the elf chief because they're not improving and there are still too many left at the base. They've become a burden, so the elf chief accepts then. Goboru asks him to explain about the option of the legendary miraculous cure that the humans wanted so badly. The elf chief explains that he'd offered that option to Goboru before, but didn't ask for the details. It seemed potent enough to cure almost any disease. Goboru doesn't understand why he'd given it to him, but the elf chief says their law only prohibits giving it to humans, but an ogre who saved his daughter wouldn't be a problem. Goboru drinks the potion and gains the abilities of quick regeneration and secret blood potion. He manages to cure a guy with just a drop of his blood and starts to worry about it, but he also feels his powers reaching extreme proportions.